Today we're talking about quick takes off the mat at the museum. All right. Today we got Chuck Yagla, two-time NCAA champion for the University of Iowa, outstanding wrestler, 1980 Olympian and so forth, Waterloo native, in the museum today, and we're talking about one scenario, one guy that is a very prominent name. You went to Iowa in 1972.
Yeah.
This guy got involved in 1972. His name's Roy Carver. Carver College of Medicine,
Yeah.
Carver Hawkeye Arena, and I know he was very, involved with wrestling, loved wrestling. But so that's what I was throwing at you. So I'm gonna let
Yeah,
you go.
well, Hawkeye Wrestling Club
Hawkeye,
started at the
yeah.
same time, and obviously Hawkeye Wrestling Club's still going strong, but they have to do a tremendous amount of fundraising. Well, back then it was Roy Carver. He was the guy, so he just said, how much you need, and he'd write a check. So it's a lot tougher these days, but God, it was awesome back then. But one of my favorite stories from back in the day was Roy Carver was a pilot, and he loved aircrafts, and he loved jets, and he flew. He was a pilot. He flew, and he loved flying, and he loved buying jets. So he had a Falcon, I think they called it, which is a 12-passenger jet we took to the Big Tens my junior year. Which people I'm sure have seen pictures on Facebook of that, of us standing out there. It was the 10 guys on the team, and then Coach Gable and Roy, because Roy was the pilot, and Coach Kurtelmeyer, who was head coach, and the rest of the staff and the trainers and all that, flew commercial, but we got to fly on his private jet, which was awesome. But the best story that I can tell is my senior year. He also had I think it was a British Aircraft Corporation, they called it a Bach 85. I'm just telling this from memory, which was an 85-passenger jet. I think it was huge.
He had 85 passengers?
Yeah, it was huge. Wow. So he bought it and remodeled it and made it a 30-passenger jet.
Okay.
So you can imagine what it looked like. You walked in, and it had plush carpet. So we got to take it on a dual meet. Our second to last dual meet my senior year was at Oklahoma, who back then, University of Oklahoma was our big rival. Nowadays, when Gable took over, it became Oklahoma State, but during my time, it was University of Oklahoma, because they had won nationals in '74, and then we won in '75. They were we didn't dual meet with Oklahoma State, we dueled with Oklahoma all the time. So my senior year, Roy offered to let us use his jet to go to, it was our second to last duel of the year. We're undefeated. We were undefeated my junior year. We had one tie. And then the last dual meet we lost was to the University of Northern Iowa, which Jim, 74, Jim Miller and one of our guys, Jan Sanderson, were off at the All-Star meet. So we both had kind of different lineups, but give credit to the University of Northern Iowa. That was our last dual meet loss, was in '74. So this is a second to last meet, my senior year.
So what year is this?
This is 76, 75, 76 season. So our dual meet's at Norman, Oklahoma. So Roy Carver offers to let us use his jet. And so it was so big it couldn't land in Iowa City, of course, because it was too big, not a big land. So we had to drive to the Quad Cities, because his home base for his business, Bandag Corporation, was Muscatine. So this jet was always in the Quad City airport. So the meet's Saturday night. So on Friday, we head off to the Quad City airport. And of course, Coach Kurtelmeyer and Coach Gable said, hey, Roy Carver offered to let us use his jet. I mean, they didn't tell us much else for our dual meet, that we're going to fly to Oklahoma on Friday, and we'll have a dual meet Saturday night, and we'll come back on Sunday. I go, okay, great. This is awesome. I mean, we're a bunch of wrestlers. We normally got in a van and drove everywhere. Well, back then it was a station wagon, not a van. You remember the days. So we drive over to the Quad City Airport, and we get ready to board this plane. We walk up on there, and the first thing you had to do when you got up to the plane, after you walked up the ramp or whatever, is you had to put footies on over your shoes, protectors, because they had this plush carpet throughout, and they, you didn't want to soil the carpet. So you walked in there, and there was a dining room table and a china closet with actual china, in the thing, and we're like, wow. And then instead of having normal seats, I mean, he had remodeled it to make it 30 passengers, so instead of having normal seats, they had these plush recliners, with headphones, and I mean, this was 1976, so you can imagine that the technology is not like it was today, but I mean, it was just like unbelievable. And then you walked a little farther, there was a bedroom in the back, and then of course a bathroom and all that. And there was 2 other people on. There was a pilot, of course, and 2 other people. There was a hairdresser and a chef. And we're not, weren't sure.
You're not eating?
We're not eating, so it's like, okay, that's kind of strange. We didn't understand that, but we weren't asking any questions. We were just awesome to have a trip like this. Yeah. So we take off, and most of us, we're wrestlers. I don't want to say we're all super intelligent, but we flew from the Quad Cities to Colorado Springs, and we're going to Norman, Oklahoma. So most of us realize Colorado Springs is not on the way to Oklahoma City or Norman, Oklahoma. So we land in Colorado Springs and wait a few minutes, and onto the plane comes James Irwin and his wife. James Irwin was Apollo 15 astronaut. Wow. And we're like, wow. So him and his wife get on the plane. So we all introduce ourselves and start talking with him. I mean, this guy had been on the moon, and we're like, wow. We have no idea why we stopped to pick him up. So we start talking to him and his wife, and then that's why the hairdresser was there in case his wife wanted her hair done, and then there was a chef there in case they were hungry and wanted to eat. And they turned around and dropped us off in Norman, Oklahoma, and then it turned out they were flying onto the Virgin Islands for the weekend because Roy Carver was throwing a party for Senator Hawley from Georgia, which in the Virgin Islands. And we're like, okay, so that's why those people were on the jet with us, and of course it was fantastic just getting able to fly on this jet. So then the weekend goes and Sunday comes and they come back to pick us up, and James Irwin and his wife, of course, when we picked them up, they were like us. They weren't tan at all. They had instant tans. It's like, wow, I mean, this is crazy. And all this time, Roy Carver, he's not anywhere to be found. He's over in Europe on business because he was a huge businessman. And so it just turned out he was just paying for this party and flying people into this party for Senator Hawley, which I'm guessing, I don't want to get into politics, but I'm guessing there was reasons why he was throwing a party for Senator Hawley. And so they get back on the plane, and then we fly from Norman back to Colorado Springs and drop them off, and then, of course, back to the Quad Cities. And, of course, the bad part of the story is that was our only dual meet loss that year.
So you got beat
there? We got beat, yeah. We got beat by Oklahoma. It was one of those meets we didn't wrestle very well and, ended up losing the meet. And it was our second to last meet of the year. So it's kind of one of those things, probably was a blessing because then, how.
Who were some of the guys on Oklahoma's lineup?
Oh, man.
Who'd you wrestle?
I wrestled, I want to say Roger Frizzell, okay, but I'm not positive that's right. That's so long ago.
So
I sure looked it up. Oh yeah, our coaches were mad. It's like, geez Louise. But that helped us, refocus and get, because we had one more meet with Iowa State, and I think we beat. I'm pretty sure. Well, I know we didn't lose. We beat Iowa State, and then of course we went on to win nationals that year and broke the all-time scoring record at the time. Right. So it was one of those times in the season where kind of gave us a kick in the gear to we were defending national champions. So I don't want to say we were getting lackadaisical, or complacent, but you know how it is. We hadn't lost a dual meet since you and I, and it's just one of those things where okay, we're maybe we're not as good as we think we are.
Boom.
Boom.